Hello and welcome. I'm Barkha Dutt and you're watching The Mojo Story, our independent digital platform that does a deep dive into the issues that really matter. Today, we are looking at the Chakka Jam that has been called by farmers across India. Those pictures coming from different states as farmers say that they will continue to keep up their protest and they will not relent. Rakesh Tikait, who has emerged as some sort of new de facto leader of the farmers' movement, has in fact set a new deadline, but it's interestingly several months away. In fact, the deadline is the 2nd of October. He says that's the outer limit for the government to repeal its laws. How do we read this wide berth that has in fact been given to the government? In some ways, it's quite interesting. There is no immediate deadline being set. It's at least 7 months away. 7 months is enough time for the government to do many things, including bring this issue back to Parliament and perhaps refer it to a JPC, a Joint Parliamentary Committee. Is this a window of conciliation, or are farmers actually digging their heels in? This even as Meena Harris, the Vice President of America, Kamala Harris's niece, continues to lead the charge online on creating a Twitter storm around the farmers' protests. Let's introduce our panel on the program today, one by one. We have Tavleen Singh, veteran journalist and columnist, with us. We have Avik Saha, who's with the Samyukt Kisan Morcha, also with the Swarajya Party, joining us. We have Sandip Ghose, columnist and commentator, and Yashwant Deshmukh, political analyst and psephologist. Thank you very much indeed, all of you. It's a pleasure having you on the program. Tavleen, very interesting sort of development has taken place. We have this speech from Rakesh Tikait, which I'll play out in a short while. But the 2nd October deadline, how should one read this? Does one read this as the farmers opening up a window for dialogue, or is it like a deadline? How did you see that?
I don't see it as a deadline. I have a very clear view that if the media had not misled the government by being over sycophantic, by really being servile and not saying, look, if the farmers have dug in their heels this long, settle with them. India is looking bad. The country is looking bad. Do something about it. Now, I think that what the farmers are doing is to try and rectify that narrative by showing what they consider, showing a conciliatory face. Because the media narrative has been that the farmers are showing absolutely they're obdurate, and that it's the government that's been showing flexibility. So I think maybe it's just that. I don't know. You're the one who met him today. What did he say?
No, at the moment, what he's saying, and I'm just actually going to play out that statement, and you can hear it carefully, and you can actually interpret it, Tavleen, both ways. You can interpret it to mean that this movement is not going anywhere, and certainly on record, he's saying we will not go anywhere till our demands are met. In fact, he's come up with a formula. He says it takes one village, one tractor, 15 men in 10 days. That's how he's going to keep the support going. He's figured out a way to do it. But before I come to Avik and ask how the farmers' movement is actually reading this statement from Rakesh Tikait, let's just listen to what he had to say.
सरकार से हमारा ये है कि हमने अक्टूबर तक का टाइम सरकार को दे दिया है। हमारे पास टाइम की कोई कमी नहीं है। वो अपनी खूब तैयारी कर ले, क्योंकि काम हमको भी है। किसान को खेत का काम है, हमको आंदोलन का काम है, क्योंकि आंदोलन आगे भी चलाने पूरे देश भर में जाना। हम 7 तारीख में 7 तारीख में 9 में 11 तारीख में बाहर रहेंगे, 8, 10, 12 में यहां रहेंगे। एक दिन यहां, एक दिन बाहर, एक दिन यहां, एक दिन बाहर। इनका बगैर इलाज करे यहां से जाए नहीं, दिल्ली की एक का कील काट कर जाएंगे।
So he's quite clear there, Tavleen, if you heard him, that they're not going anywhere, but there is a kind of different approach. We're now looking at a 7-month window. Avik, I'm actually a little curious as to how the other farmers groups are actually looking at this.
What Mr. Tikait is telling us is that farmers will be patient. We understand that this is a difficult decision for the government. Repeal of a law has political implications for the ruling party. But we also understand that unless these laws are repealed, and more importantly, laws to secure income of farmers are enacted, farmers are doomed. So this is a battle which will drag out. So we will deal with it with patience and peace. That's Mr. Tikait's message, and that is universally correct for almost all farmer organizations.
But how did you see this deadline, in a sense, now being framed in terms of October?
I think he's using 2nd October symbolically. In Sanyukt Kisan Morcha, we haven't decided on any specific date till which the farmers' organizations are giving government any time. He is invoking the imagery of Mahatma Gandhi by bringing in the date of 2nd October. Basically, the message is, we are here, we will be patient, we will be peaceful.
But does that mean that for 7 months, we're now looking at a 7-month agitation? Is that realistic?
No. I don't think we should take it literally. He is making a speech figuratively. He's basically saying that, look, if you're trying to foment trouble, if you're trying to break up the movement, it won't. It'll last. He's giving a figurative date of how long the movement will last. But we all want that there should be engagement at the earliest. There should be engagement this time with greater sense, greater understanding of each other's issues. And of course, this issue should be resolved at the earliest. But if the government wants to drag it, we will get dragged with the government, no problem.
Yashwant, how do you, with your experience of covering politics, see this? Because let's also not forget that Tikait, whom we're talking about, and I'll play out a clip from my own interview with him, was someone considered close to the BJP at one point. In fact, there are other groups in the farmers' movement, notably the one led by VM Singh, who actually say that Tikait even supported the farm laws to begin with. Tikait has done a number of flip-flops in his life, and Tikait is, in the end, not only a farmer, he's also a politician. Now, that could be both good and bad for the movement. On the bad side, there are farmers groups that don't trust him, Yashwant. And on the good side, this is actually someone who can create negotiating room out of this crisis. So it kind of works both ways, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Barkha. And right in the start, let me say this upfront that, I have been writing very openly about one thing, that I definitely want the guarantee of MSP in the law, in writing. And that is a one demand which I have always supported. But having said that, if we understand or we think everything of this entire protest was apolitical, non-political, then probably we are fooling ourselves. I mean, let's be very upfront about it. There is politics out there, and we do have very important elections coming up. I'm not talking about the elections which are coming up in the next 3 months. We have all important elections of UP and Punjab within a year from now. And we know for sure that the Western UP, Haryana and Punjab, these are the three areas where the majority of this entire protest has got support and has got roots in. To think of that rest of the India, all the farmers are kind of supporting it, I don't think so. Our data doesn't suggest that. Our political understanding doesn't suggest that. It's not the case. We know for sure. However, overall, the way this entire protest has been taking place, public of India has been always extremely emotional about two set of people in India, Jawan and Kisan. They have been in our surveys, after surveys, not just this one, even the very first year when we were doing the first year of Modi government's report card, so almost 70% of people at that point of said on the land acquisition bill that move was anti-farmer, anti-poor, and Modi government is not doing right on that. It was the same set of middle class which voted Modi in 2014, the same middle class which voted in 2019 as well. So public is very clear on their emotional support to farmers. That's not the case. But at the same time, public is also very clear on looking at the politics behind it. And the way the things are moving, we know for sure there are three major contenders as far as the power politics of Punjab is concerned. We are looking back at Aam Aadmi Party riding this entire protest again, trying to make an impact in Punjab, which in the words of Captain Amrinder Singh was just a summer storm and it was over when he said that 4 years back. I doubt that. I think Captain Amrinder Singh is going to face a problem of a lifetime, and he will have to eventually again look into rolling out from the rolls of Hindu votes and the RSS to support him again at the 11th hour, because BJP, for all practical purpose, has no horse in the Punjab politics at this point of time. However, we have to interestingly watch what happens in UP. That would be interesting thing. That is where Mr. Tikait's home turf is. He has contested elections with RLD earlier, and he would be looking out for that kind of formation. What remains to be seen, Barkha, is that Western UP is not rest of the UP. So whether this thing gains ground in rest of the UP, or it becomes or remains a Western UP regional thing, that remains to be seen.
What is your initial feedback, if you've done any surveys, any preliminary sort of exploratory sort of data crunching? What is the feedback you're picking up? What I'm understanding from what you're saying, Yashwant, is that people emotionally want to support the farmers because that is the sentiment among most ordinary Indians, but it would not impact the fortunes of the BJP, and that's why it continues to have wiggle room.
I guess the same thing that, middle class largely and people at large emotionally support the cause of farmers. No issue about that. But however, the narrative and the confusion of the different narrative that, fuses in the form of farmers' protest, that is where, majority of the people also start losing it. What happened on 26th of January definitely didn't go in the right direction as far as the perceptions battle is concerned, and the way that battle and the perception thing swung from anti-farmer, pro-farmer to anti-Punjab, pro-Punjab to anti-Sikh and pro-Sikh, and it was a very dangerous direction. Punjab has paid a big price. India has paid a big price to whatever happened in the 80s. And we just cannot allow that to be revisited or reopened in any way. But these kind of sensitivities are there, and it is going to remain there for 12 more months till the Punjab elections get over.
Let me, before I come to Sandip, just quickly get Tavleen to come in on this. I think this is an interesting point, and this happens with the Modi government a lot, that there are things that their voters don't agree with. So if you ask most people, has the government been sort of sage in how it's handled the farmers' protests, they'll probably say no, but that doesn't mean that they'll vote differently or they'll exercise a different political option. And that gives the BJP a kind of confidence or a kind of stubbornness on this issue, Tavleen, that another government may not have shown.
I think that that they've mishandled this thing from day one. First, there was all that abuse about Khalistanis and terrorists, etc. Then they have shown what is the problem with saying to the farmers, listen, guys, we'll send it to a committee. You come and tell us what changes we should make. Stop this, I mean, it's been going on too long. They can do it very easily. Why are they being so stubborn about this? It's as if the government doesn't want a solution. And because they don't want a solution, they're now in a position where they're making up these silly ideas. I saw your piece. I've also done something similar. Conspiracy theories involving pop stars. I mean, it's just the most ridiculous thing. But I think from the people that I've talked to, what has really put people off is the barricading of Delhi. The nails in the street, that they're horrified by. There's more barricading here than, in China, on the Ladakh border.
Yeah, I think the barricading has actually been what's been really bad for our international image. And, I think I want to talk a little bit about that, Sandip. Do you want to come in on that? Sorry, let me just unmute you. Go ahead, Sandip. You're unmuted at you're muted at your end. Just unmute yourself and go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
Before we come to barricading, I must first, Yashwant did a fantastic political analysis. And I would take up your question about Tikait's offer of October 2nd. I genuinely believe that's giving, whether somebody has bought that breathing space or been given that breathing space for mutual negotiation, it is certainly, I think, it's a reprieve. And keeping away from the right or wrong or the making value judgments, I personally feel, while I was referring to Yashwant's comment about the political aspect of it, the solution of this today will have to come politically. I don't think the solution of this whole agitation is going to come through any kind of committee, negotiations, etc. This will have to be maneuvered politically by the Modi government. And again, I do feel that Modi government doesn't have the option of really going back on this. They'll have to find maybe a via media, maybe some kind of concession or compromise. But if they go back on this, there are a lot of other fires burning. I don't know whether you have seen, I have seen in the last 1 week since the budget, there is now posturing being made that there'll be a railway strike on the lines of 1974 if railway privatization happens. The people that day attended a seminar of IIC where the president of the Rail Mazdoor Union, who was involved in that, was saying, and I was very surprised that there were some retired IS officers who have been in service not too long ago are also posturing against any of these privatization moves of PSUs and railways, etc. So this will be opening up Pandora's box and really.
So what are the options? If you're saying repealing these laws is not an option because it will set up a domino effect of similar protests among different groups. Firstly, I'm not sure that's true because I don't think many groups, Sandip, have the staying power and the capacity to do what the farmers have done at 3 different borders of Delhi. And I think that's really what took the government by shock. I think they underestimated it. I'm not sure every group is capable of that. But if you think the laws can't be repealed, what is the via media? I see 2 clear compromise formulas. Take it back to Parliament, send it to a JPC, and I will ask Avik if the farmers will accept that, or leave it to the states. Why can't we have one of these 2 formulas off the ground?
It could have been, Barkha, but today nobody is interested in a solution. You see, today when there is a discussion on farmers' bill in the parliament, only yesterday there was in the Rajya Sabha happening, there was no attendance of MPs. So people are really not interested in the solution at the political level. Everybody is seeing this as a moment when they've caught the Modi government on the wrong foot and they want to really nail it. And they think this could be the Waterloo moment of Modi. And Modi government, therefore, will have to use all its everything in its arsenal to try and diffuse it over a period of time. And when you're talking about the staying power of the farmers, just as Modi government may not have bargained for it, I don't think per se, nobody, whether the journalists or anybody, thought the farmers would have the staying power. Obviously, they've been getting. So I'm not alleging of the cross-border sponsorship or anything of that kind. They are getting some level of support. So today, if the farmers get tomorrow, what's preventing the George Fernandez repeat of 1974 if people really want to stall the country? But here, therefore, even if government were to tell tomorrow that, okay, let the states decide, do you think your politicians are going to step back? They're going or say, yeah, hey, that's a great solution. Or if it goes back to parliament, are they going to cooperate? So I think there is a lot of that, you will see that level of gamesmanship on both sides. And a solution will come only with due respect to Avik, a good old friend from Calcutta. What he was trying to say, I personally already sense there is a divergence between what Tikait is saying and what Avik's group is talking. So that's the way it will progress. You will see gradually these differences will widen or will be created. That's how things will unravel.
Let me actually take that to Avik right away, then Yashwant. We have seen, you would have also seen the statement from VM Singh, who was one of the groups who left the movement, Avik. And he subsequently has been talking to media and saying that Tikait is not reliable. Tikait is supported these laws. Tikait is a politician. Let Tikait have his time. After that, we'll take over. And this is going to suit the government, right? It is going to suit the government to wear out the farmers and also to play to the divisions within them. And since there is now politics involved, since there are now opposition leaders at Tikait's stage, how are you going to avoid this from taking the route of routine party politics?
There are 500 farmer organizations in this protest. Mm-hmm. That tells you that we are not one. If we were one, there wouldn't be 500 organizations. There are differences in ideology, differences in many of the aspects on farming, agriculture, agrarian reforms, etc. But one thing unites us, that is that these laws are not for welfare of the farmers. It could be for welfare of many things. It could be reformist. It could change the country. But it will certainly doom the farmers. On that, there is complete agreement. On how to reach that destination to have these laws repealed, yes, there are differences. The differences have been there from day one, and they exist even today. I'm not one who will shy away from talking about these differences. Mr. Tikait, as I said in my first bit, did not consult the SKM before talking about 2nd October. But despite these differences, when we sit together, finally we come around to agreeing that this is the common destination. And while we disagree with the path to reach that destination, we finally come to some kind of workable solution. Mr. Modi is aware of this. Mr. Modi knows that there are 500 organizations, and right from beginning, and I can rattle them off one by one, attempts have been made to create fissure and to break the movement, break unity. It hasn't worked till now. I don't think it will work.
But when you say Rakesh Tikait did not consult the Samyukt Kisan Morcha before announcing the 2nd October deadline, are you disturbed by the fact that this move was taken unilaterally?
No. I am not. I mean, Mr. Tikait will happily explain that he was invoking Gandhi in trying to bring in the message of peace. He will finally agree, because if you see, Mr. Tikait was in the press conference of the SKM even 2 days ago. So finally, we will decide together. And I agree that this is not about the staying power of farmers. This is not how long we can be at the borders. It shouldn't be that. I'm one with everyone in this panel that is not about how long we can battle the government. We are not battling the government. We genuinely believe that these laws will not do us good. And the government has to find a way. We are asking the government to find a way where it retains its respect, its respectability, its political capital, but at the same time gives us what we want.
Okay.
Other people have an opinion about it, but that doesn't really.
So let me ask what the formulas might be. Yashwant, you've spoken about the MSP, some sort of assurance on that, which, by the way, even the Swadeshi Jagran Manch had initially asked for, but then it went quiet. Then you had RSS's Bhaiya Joshi speak up, and that's actually when you saw the government put that 18-month compromise formula on the table. So the contours of a possible compromise can look like this. Either the farmers accept that 18-month abeyance, or it goes back to Parliament and it goes to a JPC, or it's left to the states. If all-out repealing is not something that the government is going to do, where do you see the solutions for this emerging?
Well, government is certainly not going to take it entirely back. I don't see that happening, because it will show government in poor light that it is a weak government and they did not think about it. Probably this entire thing happened simply because they did not give proper thought to it, that this 2.25 states which are in against them. When I say 2.25 is Haryana and Punjab and 1/4 of the UP. They probably must have thought that we can deal with that, but it was beyond that. It was very much in Delhi and next to Delhi, so it got that much of media bounce as well. But having said that, I believe that generally, as an economic policy, the government wants to get out of the entire procurement politics at large, or procurement policy at large, and probably they thought that it would be the right economic policy to have. It might be, but these kind of changes cannot be done overnight. Probably it has to be done in phased manner, and this is what has to be taken in. The guarantee of MSP has to be given to the farmers who are still skeptical about the changes. I might not be that skeptical that, at the end of the day, farmers are going to lose 100% no matter what. No, but I certainly feel that they must be given assurance in the law of the MSP guarantee. That is the thing which I support on. Having said that, at the end of the day, Barkha, you have been a terrific political reporter all your life. You know it for sure. BJP is a non-player in Punjab. BJP formed the government in 2014, 2019. Both times when Punjab voted against BJP. God damn it. I mean, we know for sure.
Yeah,
BJP is a non-Jat party in Haryana. Non-Jat. So this angle doesn't capture BJP in Haryana. BJP gets the Jat votes in the Western UP. But mind you, that vote comes to BJP every time there is a communal polarization. And whenever there is no communal polarization, that vote goes back to Ajit Singh. So it's a pendulum shift. Or for that matter, Ajit Singh comes lock, stock and barrel within the BJP. We have seen him do it 100 times before.
No, so are you saying, Yashwant, are you then saying that there are no political consequences electorally in the states from which these farmers come? Western UP, I would find tougher to dismiss, but I think you see Ajit Singh and Tikait in the end as a movable force.
No, I see that the losses in the Western UP, possible losses in the Western UP of those 10 to 15 seats in Western UP, this is what BJP is staring at. If this goes out of the hand. However, the other two options which you just talked about, going to the JPC, going back to the parliament, they are dead because of simple reason. People who want that, they are also actually doing the politics the way BJP is doing politics. You know, ashram koi nahi chala raha hai, Barkha. Everybody is doing politics. Let's be very honest and clear about it. So the other two options are a no-go for Modi government because they know it is just an eyewash. They are not going to take it. So Mr. Modi has to figure out how he can convince the people whether these things are good for them or bad for them. He is a very good speaker, orator, and he can do that. Or he can take this thing, modify it a bit, that okay, let me give a time-bound guarantee that okay, for the next 5 years or so, we guarantee the MSP and then leave it on the states. You know, you have got a problem with Amrinder Singh, go back to Amrinder Singh. You have a problem with Khattar, go back to Khattar and leave it on the state. And let's see from where it exactly takes them from.
But I just want to say to Tavleen now that sometimes the consequences for a government are not electoral. Like the Modi government tends to measure all impact in terms of whether they continue to win elections, and that's certainly one way of doing it. But if we look at the kind of fracas, for example, that has taken place over Meena Harris, Rihanna, Greta Thunberg, and the rest of them, right? And you now have, the American vice president's niece effectively leading the charge on this, and there could be two views about whether these interventions are cosmetic, deep, surface level, just jumping onto a liberal bandwagon. No matter what you think, the way the government and our own celebrities have responded, this may cause some chuckles around the world. Tavleen.
I want to put it as bluntly as possible. The government of India is looking really like a joke at the moment. All right. Now, all this, mulling over whether it can go to committee and whether it can do this, that, and the other, forget it, guys. Okay. The reason why this particular region is particularly worried is because there is a proper mandi system, which has worked reasonably well. My brother is a farmer. The farmers do not trust this government. They believe that the government is too broke to procure grain anymore, and they want to be, they want to hand it over to Adani, Ambani. You know perfectly well that is the real fear with the farmers, that they won't have any leg to stand on if that happens overnight. For a start, it was wrong. I actually believe that you have to have agricultural reform, but do it in a more sensible way, not with agricultural so-called experts.
But now look at all the different directions this controversy, Tavleen, has gone into, right? It's gone into some global conversation,
exactly,
personally fighting or trolling Kamala Harris's niece.
For the government of India and its spokespeople on social media to take on Rihanna and to take on Greta Thunberg, I mean, it's just ridiculous. For the Ministry of External Affairs to make a little declaration or whatever they call a démarche against a pop star. So, the government is looking very bad. And if I was advising Modi, which I'm not going to be doing, but, somebody there should tell him, listen, get this over with. You're looking very, very bad at the moment. India is looking bad.
All right, I want to actually take last comments, but I just want to play out to Yashwant's point that Rakesh Tikait is somebody that the farmers' movement may eventually look at with suspicion, that Western UP is the one electoral vulnerability for the BJP, not so much Punjab and not so much Haryana. And I want to understand from you why not Haryana. But this is what Tikait actually says about his relationship with the BJP in an interview to me.
अभी तक ये एक लोगों का मूवमेंट था, इससे पॉलिटिशियंस को दूर रखा गया था, ठीक है। लेकिन आज यहाँ पे डेप्यूटी चीफ मिनिस्टर दिल्ली के हैं मनीष सिसोदिया आए और बाकी नेता भी आप लोगों को अब समर्थन दे रहे हैं। आपको क्या आशंका है कि जो एक लोगों का मूवमेंट था वो अब एक राजनीतिक मूवमेंट बन जाएगा?
उन्होंने कोई अपील नहीं करी कि हमें वो दो यहाँ अलग अलग तरीके के लोग के आ रहे हैं, उनका धन्यवाद है। उनको कोई मंच शेयर नहीं करा। वे नीचे आए, मेहमान है, उसकी आस्था किसी में भी हो सकती है ना। उसने अपनी पार्टी का वो लिया कि मुझे वोट दो। यहाँ पे ये समाजवादी से हैं, ये नीचे खड़े हैं,
ये समाजवादी से है। तो जो लोग कहेंगे आप लोग अपनी राजनीति ले आए हैं।
हम किसान के बेटे हैं, हम विधानसभा में हमेशा किसान की बात उठाते हैं, गांव में किसान की बात उठाते हैं, खेती करने वाले लोग हैं। आज खेती खतरे में है, उपभोक्ता खतरे में, उसी लड़ाई को हम
पॉलिटिक्स क्या होती है, यहाँ हर आदमी उसकी आस्था जहाँ पे है वो वहाँ पे वोट देता है। मैंने वोट किसी को दी, मेरी वाइफ ने वोट अलग दी।
आप तो बीजेपी को पसंद करते थे।
मैंने बीजेपी को वोट दी, मेरी वाइफ ने दूसरे को वोट दी। वोट देने का सबका अधिकार है।
आज भी बीजेपी को वोट देंगे?
नहीं, मेरा वो नहीं है वोट देने का, किसका वो है मैं वो बताया, वोट का बताना नहीं चाहिए, लेकिन मैंने दिया। मेरी वाइफ को नहीं थी, उसने किसी और को दिया। तो ये सवाल नहीं है, हर आदमी पॉलिटिक्स है, वो चाहे चुनाव लड़ जाए या वोट।
जिंदगी में ही राजनीति है।
जिंदगी में हर आदमी भी राजनीतिक है।
So har aadmi, Yashwant, this is to your point. Of course, he's saying it in a different way. He's saying that there's politics at the heart of life. You were making a different point. But if you hear him, it's quite interesting. He says he voted for the BJP, his wife voted for someone else. That those who have come to Ghazipur may be voting for different parties. They're there as farmers. Do you believe that many of those people could actually be Modi's own voters?
No, I don't believe that. I mean, honestly speaking, I mean, you asked me a question, and I said it right in the starting that I am in favor of the farmers' guarantee of the MSP. But I don't believe that the majority of the people who are leading these 500 or 1,000, whichever the number could be of the organizations and the people, you see, you asked a very relevant question. Why exactly, even Tavleen said so, why exactly is this government not bothered? This government is probably not bothered because majority of the people who are there and who are making hue and cry, they did not vote for the BJP, and BJP says that in any case they are not going to vote for us, and they are trying to play up a negative. Tavleen, I get your point that it's looking really kind of mocking kind of thing in all these Western angle and Rihanna and everything. But look at the narrative they are trying to drive down to their own middle class 26th of January onward supporters, that this is only to bring bad name to the country that is India. That's the kind of narrative that their political in charges are trying to make. So politically speaking, I don't believe that those who are in favor of these protests, barring the Jats of the Western UP, there was no BJP constituency at play in here. And even the Jats of the Western UP, they have always been swinging like a pendulum in the normal times.
So are you saying, Yashwant, that there is no political reason for the government to move back?
Not a political reason. As long as they can tell rest of the country that we were open enough, we were kind enough to listen to their problem, listen to their suggestion, and see, we even put it on the hold. They are not coming. So they are kind of tiring it out. That let the rest of the country see that we were open, we wanted to talk, but these people are not willing to talk or not willing to have a solution. So that is what the weight and that kind of politics that BJP is going to play. But as far as the core politics of this entire thing is concerned, BJP does not want to be seen as anti-farmer. That is for sure. It doesn't really. That is why they have gone kind of soft and to see how they don't want to be seen as anti-farmer. But however, that they feel, Barkha, that rest of the country, their core voter is understanding what BJP's point of view is. They don't look at the political damage because they feel it's already done in that way.
I think that's very, very interesting. And I actually want to, as I take last comments, take that to Avik, right? I think that there is an insider-outsider dimension that seems asinine to us when we look at this whole Rihanna, Meena Harris versus government. But they're probably playing to their domestic base at this point, Avik, right? And the fact of the matter is, let's look at the compromise formulas. Would any of these be acceptable to the farmers? Taking it back to the parliament, referring it to a JPC. Would anything short of an absolute repeal be acceptable to the farmers?
As things stand today, nothing short of repeal will work. But when we talk about repeal, let's understand these laws too. Two of the laws are clearly not within the remit of the central government. That's been debated, that's been discussed. It's an issue of law. Perhaps those two laws should be repealed. One, the Essential Commodities Act is certainly within the remit of the central government. That could perhaps be sent to a JPC. But farmers' organizations have not taken a stand on this. They still demand repeal. But one thing I just wanted to bring up, Barkha, is that on the issue of votes, I understand Yashwantji's point, but vote and support are not ancestral property. You can't carry them and pass them on. This BJP government, this Prime Minister and his cable of support of his advisors could not explain why BJP lost Rajasthan, could not explain why BJP lost Madhya Pradesh, 3-time government, and Chhattisgarh. And we see that as largely farmers' issues. So if you are going to battle farmers, it has an electoral impact. It existed in 2000.
Yashwant, brief interjection, and then I want to go to Sandip. Yeah, Yashwant? Sorry. Let me just remove you from mute. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Very briefly, very crisply. While I totally agree with his points on Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, let's not forget within 6 months, when the mandate was for Modi, they voted 100% for Modi in all these 3 states.
Yeah.
Public knows the mandate. Public knows what exactly they are voting for. They might have voted for the anti-state government and local anti-incumbency. 25 of 25 in Rajasthan, 11 out of 11 in Chhattisgarh, and 27 out of 29 in Madhya Pradesh. What exactly we are talking about? 7 out of 7 in Delhi, for that matter. 10 out of 10 in Western UP.
No, and that I think is the point, that if the government continues to believe, Sandip, that there are no electoral consequences, and having already made an offer, it's not very clear where this is going. If you look at this MEA versus Rihanna, Meena Harris battle, embarrassing in Boston, maybe not in Bareilly, some would argue to its own base, right, Sandip?
Yeah, that's very true. Barkha, first of all, this government has never been known to get unduly bothered about what is this international opinion. They would be bothered only if they tomorrow find a new US administration or somebody else is taking a different view. That is when they'll take it seriously. And what the people who are supporting Rihanna, etc., but they think, or now Meena Harris's statement might give them reason to think that maybe the new administration is going to take it critically. So that's one part. But what I would submit to you and Tavleen, we sometimes see what we want to see. So you're part of the ecosystem, where you move around, they are looking at the barricades over there or international community and thinking there is. But let me tell you, maybe it's a separate ecosystem which I am more familiar with or have access to. Rest of India, this what Yashwant was saying is coming through very clearly. The rest of India sympathy for this movement is dwindling. And
why?
All these
Why? Because that's what the assumption was. One could be that Republic Day turned the tide, but I think the farmers have been able to argue that Deep Sidhu, we don't know, dodgy fellow, kiska aadmi hai, pata nahi, 1. 2, Tikait's tears did rejuvenate the movement. 3, the fact is that the police which came, and I saw this happening myself, the police which came to clear out Ghazipur, the border, could not do it. Once Rakesh Tikait sat there and cried, they could not, and the police, I think, would not contemplate force. So there is a very, very piquant challenge here for the government. This government cannot have these farmers sit in for another 5 months.
No, but that is where the war of attrition is happening, as Yashwant is saying. But in terms of whether you call the optics or the narrative in the rest of the country, I don't think this group is able to get that support. That is what is dwindling, and government is very cleverly, whether it's a Rihanna and other issues, they are playing it to make it the rest of India kind of a situation. Okay. But the solutions which you say, I'll take half a minute. All of the solutions are possible, but my uneducated guess is you'll find some of these solutions coming from people like Captain Amrinder Singh, who will tell the government something, because he would now start getting worried about his electorate, his next election, and say, okay, why don't you leave it to me to handle it in 18 months, or you give the MSP guarantee and I will diffuse it, something like that will come through.
I do have to close in 2 minutes. Avik, you wanted to briefly make a point, and then I'll let Tavleen wrap this up for us. Avik?
On the issue of election and votes, they voted back for Modi precisely because of the PM Kisan Yojana. And What has happened in this case is Mr. Modi is leading the charge from the front. The 3 state elections could be incumbency and local issues. But here, it is the Prime Minister versus the farmers. That narrative he has set.
That's a very important point. No, I don't know if he said it, but I want to ask Yashwant and then Tavleen about this. You know, on repeated reporting trips to the farmers' protests, this is the one thing, Yashwant, what happens when Modi is the message, when Modi is the face of the government, when people believe literally no one else matters. The agriculture minister's name, if you ask these farmers, they probably don't know, maybe they know it now. The farmers tell, at least in all my interviews have told me, Modi ji se kahiye, hamare saath aake baat kare. Hame Modi ji se baat karni hai. They don't think that a dialogue with anybody else is relevant, right? And to that extent, whether the Prime Minister wanted to pit it as Modi versus the farmers or not, in the farmer's mind, Modi is the man who is either going to solve this or not solve this. Is that not a problem for brand Modi? Maybe not in terms of elections in these 3 states, but generally, I can't believe the Prime Minister wants to be seen as anti-farmer. This is not what he would have wanted to be seen as Gujarat Chief Minister, for sure.
Well, definitely anybody who has voted for in the name of Modi would like to see that face, to come and tell them what is to be done or what the point of view is. I mean, at least try to explain that. And I think the Prime Minister has on more than one occasion tried to explain in his regular briefings with the people. But having said that, I don't think that Mr. Modi has used all his faces who are reconciliatory in their profile. Like, I don't think that Mr. Modi has used Mr. Rajnath Singh properly in this game, or Mr. Nitin Gadkari properly in this game.
Yeah.
You know, all the faces which have been sent to talk to farmers or the farmer unions, I mean, they probably do not carry that kind of weight, which he might do it now. You never know. So these things, and all at the end of the day, Barkha, let's not forget the kind of communicator that Mr. Modi is. Let's not forget that. You know, he knows that this India for 2 mandates has given the mandate basically on his face value. He is not going to do anything which will dilute his political or social capital. And he is a master communicator. Maybe, I don't know when he wishes to do it directly. Maybe he is looking at the different state election mandates to do that job for him. Because at the end of the day, we all say, Loktantra mein to janta ka ye raay hai samne aayegi. We have got 4 elections coming up. You know, the kind of mandates which will come out from those elections. What is the kind of headline they are going to make? We don't know yet. So maybe that is the kind of a calculated risk that he is willing to take.
Tavleen, that is a very interesting point, that till the Prime Minister actually believes, and he will be measuring every day the political and social capital of his government, he may not be very bothered by being a laughing stock in the eyes of a liberal ecosystem or in the eyes of an international liberal media that he thinks doesn't like him anyway. There has to be actually significant costs to his own political reputation and to that of his government, and that is what will make him intervene.
Okay, I absolutely disagree that he's not worried about his international image. He has cultivated that international image very carefully of being a powerful Indian Prime Minister. He doesn't want to be looking like a joke. Secondly, brand Modi has taken a battering because of this. Number 3, and this is my last point, it isn't just the farmers who know that there's a 2-man government in Delhi. You talk to businessmen in Bombay and ask them to go, name the ministers in the economic ministries. They won't be able to. The government has been run in a very controlled, by 2 men, actually, by 1 man and his deputy. So the farmers want to speak to Modi because they know he's the only one who can take a decision.
Yeah, and I think that's where the intractable challenge is for this government, and whether or not, I would say humbly, there are electoral consequences in Punjab and Haryana, there are larger political ripples. And as you said, Yashwant, no leader in India can afford to seem anti-farmer. I think that is at the heart of this conversation, whether or not you think these farmers are from only 3 states or 4 states or 3.5 states. But leaving it there, we'll continue to follow the story from the ground. Yashwant Deshmukh, Sandip Ghose, Tavleen Singh and Avik Saha, pleasure having you on the program. To our audience, see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.